Hello and good afternoon, folks. My name is Rich Logan. I'll be your host for today's presentation. Thank you for joining us for another Flycast Partners webinar. Today's webinar is geared towards our government agency friends only. We are addressing discovery and dependency mapping. And our presenter will be Flycast Partners' very own Kyle Hamilton. Now, Kyle has well over 20 years in the IT space in a variety of areas within IT, whether it be IT service management, IT asset management, and everything else in between. Business service management, network automation, very familiar with the ITIL processes. So he's well versed in many, many different areas of IT. And before we get started, let me introduce Flycast Partners. Flycast Partners offers best-in-class implementation services and training in IT service management, IT asset management, IT operations management, enterprise service management, and workload automation spaces using ITIL best practice. Our professional service team has well over 5,500 professional services engagement, both on-site and remote. And remote seems to be pretty important nowadays. As an organization, Flycast Partners has well over 1,100 regular customers throughout Canada and the United States. I encourage you to reach out to us at 844-FLYCAST, that's 844-359-2278, or visit our website. Chat with one of our IT experts. They're standing by to answer your questions and provide you with whatever you're looking for. Or you can email us at info@flycastpartners.com. Without further delay, I'm going to turn this over to our presenter today, Kyle Hamilton.
Okay, thank you, Rich. Can everybody hear me okay?
Hear you fantastic, and your screen looks equally as well.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Rich. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Kyle Hamilton. I'm a sales engineer with Flycast Partners, here to present the BMC Helix Discovery solution, to talk a little bit about how this can assist you in being able to manage assets, as well as provide some backup for processes like your incident management, problem change management, with some subject matter expertise that might be otherwise hard to come by. So to that point, I've got one slide I want to cover that I was going to highlight some of the key points before we take a look at the interface and take a look at actually some of the data that Helix Discovery collects. The first point to note or mention is, number one, it's a very easy solution to deploy and manage. It's delivered typically as a virtual appliance, so it's simply a file download. All you have to do is download the virtual appliance, install it on a host of your choosing, and start discovering. You can go from knowing nothing to having your data center entirely mapped out in a day, if you really want to be aggressive about it. That's primarily due to the fact that, number one, you can install the appliance very quickly and easily without having to worry about operating system or having to configure a server for it. And number two, it's an agentless solution. So this doesn't require you to deploy anything within your environment outside of that virtual appliance. So there's nothing to install on your servers, nothing to deploy to any other systems. Everything is done from that virtual appliance in an agentless fashion, so that's really the only install that you have, is to install that virtual appliance and you're up and ready to go. The third point to make is this is something that is focused on your data center, your infrastructure. So it's designed so that you can map out the back end of the infrastructure, your routers, your switches, your edge devices, network devices, so that you have an accurate mapping of how everything, not only what you have, but how is it all connected? How is it related? How does one device impact another one? Which goes to the last point, and probably one of the biggest benefits of the Helix Discovery solution is it not only tells you what you have, but what are those connections, so that you're not having to build those relationships. You're not having to build out those impact connections manually. But Helix Discovery can go out and build that for you and help you understand how things are connected and how things are related and what kind of impacts exist, so that again, it can help you shore up processes like change management, for example, where somebody's being asked to either assess or analyze a change and determine, what that impact may be if things go bad, as well as simply being able, or maybe they're being asked to approve that change and they want to understand what that impact may be without having to convene all your subject matter experts. Have to get your network engineers in the room, and you got to get your server admins, you got to get your application owners in the room, so everybody can brainstorm and try and figure out, what those relationships are and what the impact may be. Now you can take and have that subject matter expertise collected for you on a regular basis, so that anybody that's being asked to troubleshoot a problem, if they're working on an incident or analyzing a problem, or if they're being asked to assess a change, all of this data can be exposed so that it can shore up those processes and give you some valuable information, how not just so you can manage and know what assets you have and where they are, but what the potential impact may be if a particular device goes down, or if you're implementing a change and a change goes poorly. What's the potential impact to the business if that server happens to fail, or that router doesn't come back like you expect it to? So with that, I'm going to log in to the interface, and we'll take a look at, number one, how it's configured, as well as some of the data that can be collected. So first and foremost, how do we go get all of the data? So as I mentioned with Helix Discovery, this is something that doesn't require you to deploy anything. I can install this appliance, and in this case, I'm running this as a local appliance. So I've got this appliance running on a machine here on my laptop, but I still have the ability to be able to go out and discover even networks outside of my own. So if you're leveraging any kind of cloud services, AWS, Azure, OpenStack, things like that, being able to scan those environments in the same way that you can scan your own local network. So we actually have connectors that will plug you into AWS, they'll plug you into Azure, so that you get a full understanding not only of what's in your data center, but also what cloud services, what cloud devices are you managing and running, so that you can go out and have a full understanding of the infrastructure, not just your own internal network, but those pieces that actually reach outside of your network and end up, in AWS or in Azure. So you can set these scans up for different IP ranges, right? You're going to scan, one subnet, at this time, and then I'm going to scan this subnet later in the day, or I want to scan this part of my network tomorrow. I can set all of these things up so that they can run on a regular schedule, or I can, of course, run it manually, as I'm doing here now, so that you can, constantly get updated information as to what assets you have out there deployed, as well as what those connections and what all those relationships look like. And most customers will typically have, multiple scans, right, focused on different, again, the whole purpose is you break it out so you're not going to have to discover everything at once. You're going to do it application by application or subnet by subnet, be able to break that down so that those devices that are more critical, you may want to discover those devices on a more frequent basis. Those less critical devices, less critical applications, you may want to scale that back a little bit and maybe not worry about it once a day, but once a week or once a month if they're not that critical. So you set up all these scans so that the system's constantly going out and it's pulling in all that updated information, so that you can then dive into those results and start taking a look at what you have in your environment and how it's connected. Now, to that point, there are multiple dashboards that are available out of the box. We'll take a look at a couple. You can see a list of those over on the right-hand side here in this little drop-down window, these are all your out-of-the-box dashboards, but you can see at the bottom, you have the ability to copy those and then make changes if you want to create your own or create some different view that kind of mashes up maybe several dashboards into some specific view that makes sense for you. And this allows you to dig into all of the collected details when those discovery scans run. Now, this baseline dashboard that we're looking at now essentially takes all the discovered data and it breaks it down categorically. How many applications do I have? How many SAN storage systems are out there? How many routers? How many switches? How many databases do I have out there? So that you can accurately understand not just how many devices you have, but where are all the applications? Where are all of the management controllers running? And BMC Discovery can assist you with everything from your standard Windows, Linux, Unix servers all the way to mid-range if you're running AS400, IBM iSeries devices, all the way to being able to discover mainframe environments. So you may be running a large IBM mainframe system, in which case I'll scroll in here a little bit and make a little bit more because I know this is busy. This is the type of information, the level of detail that Helix Discovery can gather without any manual intervention whatsoever. Now we're going to take a look at a couple of other visualizations here that aren't quite as detailed as this so that we can dig into a little bit. But essentially what these maps are providing you is it's providing you the details of where you have a physical host, for example, a device that has multiple applications running on it, right? That device may have multiple ports. It may have multiple IP addresses associated to it running different services. This gives me the ability to display this graphic to be able to dig into all of that detail. Now let's take an example of, let's just say I want to find out in my environment how many instances of Microsoft SQL are running. So I can use the little global search box at the top, and it'll pop up and show me that I've got 52 instances of Microsoft SQL running out there in my environment. Some of those in Azure, some of those are running on premises. Now, if I want to dig into any one of those, let's say I want to take a look at my East Coast Azure SQL Server. Now I can say, bring up the visualization. Let me see how that server is configured. Now you'll notice in the graphic, as it displays these elements, everything from the server itself to the applications like Apache that are running on it, to IP address pools that may be assigned to it, and subnets that are connected. Now, many of these elements, you'll see have these little plus signs, meaning that there are other relationships out there that I might not be showing or displaying by default, but I can expand this out if I need to move in a particular direction and I want to go take a look at what else is out there on the East Coast, what kind of virtual machines I have running out there, then I can expand this out and I can drill into this map. And as soon as I click on those plus signs, it's going to expand out and adjust so that I can see all the different components: software, hardware, physical, virtual, you name it. All of this is collected via that agentless discovery. Now, in terms of being able to collect all this data, we talked about setting up the discovery scans so you can go run and find out what's in different parts of your state. It's not limited to simply being able to go in and tell you what's out there and some high-level details, what a lot of tools can do. But this actually allows you to go in and query those devices directly. So rather than just doing an SNMP query and finding out that it's a Cisco Catalyst switch or it's an F5 switch, I can use what's called patterns These are provided by BMC. You can create your own, but you'll see I've got roughly a little over 2,000 that are active in my environment. That's out of probably about 7,000 or 8,000 that are actually out there. And these get updated monthly. All right, so I can download new patterns as they come out on a every 30-day basis. I can set that up so it automatically goes out to BMC and it's going to grab all the new content. So any new versions of Microsoft SQL or Oracle or Sybase or whatever the case may be, those are going to get updated in this knowledge base update that I get once a month. And then I can choose which one of those templates that I download do I want to make active. There may be some things, if I don't have any Oracle financials running in my environment, no need to check for that pattern. I can easily turn that off, just disable it, no need to check. But for those things that I have within my environment, I can enable those patterns that I download so that if I am looking at, let's say, an F5 switch, this gives me the ability to actually take a look at the actual pattern that's running and think of a pattern as this is your blueprint. This is what helps you identify an F5 IP switch. When we go out there and we scan the network, how do we determine that's an F5? How do we know that it's a certain version? This pattern you see below is an actual script that gets run against that device. So just as if you were actually sitting at the command console, logged in as an administrator and able to issue commands, whether you're on a router and you want to show Ethernet ports or you want to show throughput or turn something up or turn something down, I can create a script to do the exact same thing. So the level of detail that I have access to through this tool is the same as if I'm sitting logged into that router or that switch or that server, issuing those commands directly through the console. So I can gather whatever information I deem or you deem necessary, whatever level of detail. So these are fully configurable. They're easily downloaded so that you don't have to configure them and adjust them if you don't need to. But if there's additional information you want on a particular switch or a particular device, then it provides you for the ability to go in and edit this script. So you may want other attributes to be collected. You may want to issue other commands outside of those that are available by default. So you can always go in and edit that script and add those additional command lines so that you can collect whatever information you would like about any device in your infrastructure. Whether it's a custom device, as things come out, let's say, next week, Cisco releases a brand new router model and it's not in here yet. You don't have a pattern for that. You can typically either wait about 30 days, in which case BMC's gonna know about that new router and they're gonna add that pattern for you automatically. Or you can also go in and you can create your own patterns. So, and this would also apply if you've got any kind of bespoke software. So you're doing any kind of internal development, whatever that may be, .NET, Java, you name it. So that I can use a template, like you see these that are provided here, to help me create a pattern so that I can then identify that bespoke piece of software that we've developed. So every time I go out and I scan the network, I can identify that software, know exactly what it is and what it does and what version it is, etc., using either a process that we can look for on the device, or it may be a simple file based discovery where I just look at the file system, and if I determine there's a file on the drive, then I can make determinations as to what applications are installed. But this gives you a way to be able to come in and create additional patterns that maybe BMC doesn't provide that you need, so that you can create those blueprints so that the next time you go out and do that scan, you're getting a more complete and a more accurate picture of the environment, because you've now gone out and created those blueprints that are going to help you identify those devices and those applications as you do those network scans. So it gives you a granular level of detail that you can go into, as well as supporting, again, myriad of platforms, not just Windows, but you need to do discovery on VMware, for example, your mainframe and Linux devices, all supported. And again, I can go in and I can even adjust the content that I want to pull out of ESX if I'm doing a virtual discovery. So it gives you the ability to adjust and manage the level of detail you need so that when you do that discovery, you're getting the most complete picture of your environment possible. Now, if I take the example, let's actually just start with the cloud. So let's say you're using AWS or Azure, you're leveraging cloud services. So you want to have an accurate, idea or representation of, what kind of Azure or AWS resources you're consuming. Same thing goes where I can go in and I can pull up, the West Coast of my Azure environment, for example, and take a look at what kind of storage usage I've got, running, and what kind of network components and virtual machines are out there, et cetera. But not only can I look at what information is discovered, right? So I may take this graphic when I'm pulling up a particular Azure environment, and maybe say I want to do some modeling on top of this. I want to put some business context to the information I'm looking at. So with Helix Discovery, you can go in and create application models on top of this data. So I may want to take a list, a group of systems, a group of storage, some networking components like I'm looking at here, and I say, I want to make this, I'm going to call this my payroll system, right? So I can go in and I can put a label on those devices now and say, okay, this represents my payroll application. So now I'm getting some business context to this, so that if I get an alert or an alarm that says, this virtual machine goes down or networking on the West Coast is degraded, then I know that that's going to, pardon me, I know that that's going to affect my payroll system. Or if I want to put additional attributes on it, so maybe I want to call this something like, let's say, version, and we'll say version 2.0. All right, and I can then say maybe the app owner, who's in charge of it, all right? So I can go in and now I can apply additional information, some metadata on top of the discovered information. So that, again, now I can put some business context onto this. Put some underscore here. So now when I come back in and I want to change, let's say, some value, now when I come in, you'll notice now it's kind of thrown this additional element in there that wasn't there before. So now I've kind of gone and I've labeled this as payroll, right? It's going to track the version that I entered and the application owner, and all of those details are going to be, recorded here. But now I can also, when I return here in the future, now I may come in and log in to see that homepage and say, well, I want to take a look at payroll. And now it's immediately going to show me that, yep, here's your payroll system. So now I can come back to that and understand exactly what elements make up that payroll system, which virtual machines, which applications, where they're running. And all this data can then, of course, be used to feed your CMDB of choice, whatever that may be. So any, service desk application, whether you're running Avanti, whether you're running Helix Remedy, we're running ServiceNow, They integrate with all of them so that this can serve as a source of data for that CMDB and allow you to manage that data in the CMDB without having to, attach an entire team of individuals that would be constantly busy trying to collect and keep this type of information up to date, especially when it comes to the connections and the relationships and things like that. Even in the smallest of environments, maintaining this kind of detail and keeping it accurate can be extremely challenging and extremely resource intensive. So the biggest purpose of Helix Discovery is to assist you in collecting that data so that you can use half of a full-time employee to manage the details and do some cleanup, and maybe go in and do some modeling and put some attributes and things like that on the models, but they're not having to spend time making updates every time somebody readjusts a network connection or switches a server from one port to another port on a router. This can automatically detect those changes for you so that CMDB administration becomes a much easier proposition, actually possible in many cases. Rich, I guess I'll take this point because I see my chat little window flashing. Do we have any questions so far?
No, and actually that's the reason why the chat window is flashing, because I keep reaching out to the audience asking for questions. Folks, in the beginning, I kind of forgot to tell you guys, if you type your questions in, I'm gonna read them off to Kyle and he'll answer them live during today's presentation. So take a couple moments, whenever you have a question, type that in there and Kyle will be happy to answer that for you. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Kyle.
Okay, thanks, Rich. Now let's go. Let's take a step back and let's go take a look again at the SQL Server as an example. When I select a given SQL box, let's say this East Coast SQL Server, I don't necessarily have to, just display the graphic. When I select that, if I look just down below, you're also going to see the collected details for that SQL box. So it's not only giving me the graphic and the relationships and impacts, it's also giving me the ability to get detailed hardware, software characteristics. And again, that's coming from those patterns, those scripts that are running, that are pulling all this data back for me. So I can go and grab whatever I want. And the nice part about the Helix Discovery database is it's considered what's called a leaf node database. Excuse me, there are no tables, there are no fields you have to create. If you decide you want to go out, you want to discover a new piece of information on a server, you just go discover it. It'll automatically add it to the form. It'll add it to this display. You don't have to go and create a new field or modify some table. The system will automatically add that field and display it for you so that there is no database administration to this whatsoever. You don't have to deal with any kind of database on the back end where you have to create fields or create relationships and things like that. So again, it makes it very easy to be able to administer. If there's other information you want to collect, simply add it to that discovery script. It'll pull it back and it'll automatically add that information to that database without you having to make those changes.
And Kyle, we have our first question from Jane. Jane wants to know, are agents required to be installed on the devices to collect this data?
Not at all. There's no single, so all this SQL Server data right here that's collected, we're looking at, no agents required to gather any of this. No agents for Azure, no agents for AWS. Everything is done from this virtual appliance in this case. So absolutely nothing else to deploy. Now you will be providing, of course, when we're talking about, logging into SQL and getting SQL database details, or you want to log into a Cisco switch and you want to pull, port information, that will require credentials. All right, so you have to authenticate so that we know that that user has access to pull that detail, but it doesn't require anything to be present. And of course, for things like, a Cisco switch, for example, there are no agents. There is no agent for a Cisco switch. So everything is done remotely via those scripts, so that there's nothing else to deploy at all. Now, was there any other questions, Rich?
Not at this time, but folks, I encourage you, go ahead and put your questions in there if you've got them, and Kyle will be happy to answer.
Now let's take a look at some of the other types of dashboards that are available, besides breaking things down by, just categorization. Here's all your switches and routers and things like that. One of the really nice features of Helix Discovery is the ability to track what they call extended data. Extended data would be data we can pull from the vendors themselves. It'd be a hardware vendor. It can be IBM, Dell, HP, could be software vendor, Oracle, Microsoft, Adobe. We connect directly to a database so that when this updates once a month, you can have a dashboard that'll tell you exactly when end of support's coming up for that version of SQL, or how many devices do I have that are out of warranty. I can create these dashboards to highlight, some of that end of life, end of support type information. So if I know if I've got end of support, exceeded on, 58% of my devices, then, I'm going to drill down and find out what do I have to deal with. Now I've got all these machines where end of support is way past. So maybe I need to start getting rid of these devices. Maybe I need to start collapsing them or transferring or updating them. So this gives me the ability from that dashboard to be able to see, to pinpoint which devices are at risk for end of support, end of warranty. And then of course it gives me the opportunity to be able to go in and then visualize it and say, okay, well, what does this device really do? How does it fit in the environment? And can we upgrade it? Does it need to be upgraded? What happens, if we don't? Again, the relationships and the impacts that it detects for that device will help you get a good understanding of how that fits in the environment, what part it plays, as well as be able to help you make decisions of, all right, how do we need to handle this? Is this something that needs to be, do we need to get rid of this or update this immediately? Is it something that can be put off or held off till a later point? You can use that extended data to help you target problem areas in the environment, just simply by using end of support, end of life data. Or you may do the exact same thing. A lot of customers will use this when they're doing disaster recovery, right? They're trying to set up a disaster recovery process or program, or they're doing a data center migration. And they want to know, how are things mapped out right now so that we can make sure it gets recreated in the same way when we transfer it. Or if I'm trying to collapse my data center and I'm trying to consolidate, the same type of extended data, that end of support, end of life type of data, can also apply to devices. So I actually see, in this case, power consumption, right? So at the same time that we pull end of support, end of life data, I can pull up a list of devices like you see here that are going to show me which machines are consuming the most power in my data center, which ones are, producing the most heat, right? So I can use that as information to help me determine, let's get rid of the ones that are, power hungry and replace those with devices that require less or put out less heat so that we don't have to spend as much money on cooling in the data center, as well as being able to give you an understanding of where you may have an opportunity to collapse. Where do you have servers that have excess capacity? They're not using all of the installed RAM. They don't have that many software applications installed on them versus others that may be running 20 or 30 different apps. So this can help you pinpoint devices and applications within your environment and give you the opportunity to make decisions on how to collapse those. Which ones do we get rid of? Which ones do we focus on? You've got the dashboard view here, but then of course you can also go in, if I want to take a look, we've got several devices that have, 8 CPUs in them, I may want to go take a look at those devices to see, again, what do they do? Maybe I can throw another app on there if it's not something that I think is going to impact, everything else that it's already doing. So it gives you some information that you can use to help make decisions about managing the data center and managing the infrastructure.
Okay. And we have another question, Kyle. If you are in multiple cloud hosting environments as well as on-prem, is a virtual appliance or collection device needed in each separate location? That's a good question.
That is a good question, and the answer is no. One simple, again, in this environment here, this is a local VM. I'm sitting in Dallas in my home office running a local VM, and I can hit that scan button and execute that scan on AWS or Azure, just connected to my AT&T wireless right here in the house. There's nothing that I put in Azure. There's no agents running in AWS or Azure. All I have to do is I have to have access to that IP address, right? I have to be able to see it, which is it's a part of your network. Or if you're on VPN, you should be. And then I just tell it to go scan that IP address, and it'll report that information back. Now, any other questions, Rich?
Not at this time, but folks, if you have questions, now's the time to ask. Well, we have Kyle.
Another important piece, besides just being able to drill into, hardware, software details and look at the discovered data, is be able to run, some reports that are going to help you make sense out of all that discovered data. And a lot of the important reports, some of the most critical ones, are those that are going to help you find out about maybe those areas of the network that they're a dark spot. And you've got little black holes out there where you've got things running, you're not sure exactly what they're doing. You'll notice here, right on this dashboard, I can look at a report called Seen but Unscanned. What this means is there are devices out there, and you can kind of see their little kind of a description summary at the top. There may be devices out there that are on another part of the network, or they're on the other side of a firewall where the port's blocked and I can't get to it, so I can't scan it. But the system is this report is essentially identifying and telling me that you have there in your network that we don't know about. We haven't scanned them because you haven't added them, to one of those discovery ranges. But we know that they're out there because there's another device that you have scanned, some other server or some other switch that refers to it. So we know it's there because a device in inventory is telling us that it's communicating with that device over a certain port. Maybe it's a SQL Server service, or it's some other app service that's running. So the system can actually come back and tell you, there's an IP address out here that is being used. It's actively communicating with, your SQL box, but you haven't added it to any of those discovery runs. So you may want to go back and add that so we can figure out what that is and figure out what it's doing and how it's connected. So we can actually help you understand what you don't know, right? Where you have those blind spots, where somebody might have put something up, in a closet somewhere, and you don't even know it's there. But this will help pinpoint it and say you've got machines out there that you haven't yet taken a look at, but you might want to go take a look at them. So we can go and add those IP addresses that you see here to one of those scans, so that tomorrow morning I make sure and I collect all the information on these devices, so that when I come in and run this report tomorrow, hopefully, ultimately you'd like to see this report be completely blank, meaning that you know about everything that's out there. You've already looked at it, it's already been scanned. But if you have those blind spots, those types of reports can help you, pull that detail out. It could also just be, a simple summary report on software or hardware. So you see some of the different breakdowns for operating system as an example. Show me how many Windows machines and Unix boxes, et cetera, I have out there. And of course, I can drill into that data. If I want to take a look at the Windows machines or the Unix, I can click, and it gives me searching and sorting and filtering options within the report, so I can get exactly what I'm looking for. And of course, these can all be exported and printed as CSV, Excel files. You can schedule it if you want to get this data, sent to you on a regular basis. So there's also automation so that you don't have to log into this interface necessarily to get important information. You may have it just delivered to you on a regular basis. If it's an important report or some type of breakdown on the infrastructure you need, makes it very easy for you to be able to set those up on a regular schedule so you can get that information. And these dashboards, as I mentioned, there's a host of them out of the box, but they're also very easy to create. So if there's another dashboard that you want, you can go in and add those elements very easily and create a new view for an executive or a manager that has a particular focus, whether it's on the Cisco equipment or they're only concerned with servers or whatever the case may be, so that they can have the exact view that they need. So for government agencies, you got assets distributed all over the place, everything from mainframe all the way down to somebody's Dell laptop. This is a tool that can help you identify what's out there, understand how it's configured, what it's connected to, what purpose it serves, how long has it been in place, when does it support run out, all the critical details that allow you to manage your environment much more effectively and have a CMDB that, again, you can maintain accuracy and understand exactly where your assets are and what they're being used for without having to spend days and weeks and hours or an entire group of team or entire group of people just to be able to keep things halfway accurate. Now I know we've got like 3 minutes left, so Rich, I see I don't know if the chat's flashing for another question or if
we have a question. We do have another question. Can you report on ports and the services in use on each port using this tool? And follow up, how is BMC Discovery licensed? By node, by subnet, by site? Those are the questions.
Okay. So first question, absolutely. So you want to get your port data, your switch data. Again, I can get every piece of information out of that switch, right? About which ports are open, what they're connected to, what services are running on those ports, every bit of detail. If you can sit down at a command line, Cisco iOS or Cat iOS, and type a command in, we can run that command via those agentless scripts and pull back the same data. So if you can get it from a console when you're logged into that switch or that router, we can pull it in automatically. Now, in terms of, and you'll see this actually allows you to follow, you can, even though all the information is not displayed in one page, I can, take a look at the fiber ports on that switch if I want, and drill into details on a particular port. So I can see specifics about it, what it's connected to. There's even a feature called the provenance, which when I'm looking at data, if I click this over here, this provenance actually shows me or allows me to see, how do we know that that port's actually open? How do we know that that port's at 8 gigabit port? Well, because it tells us we ran a query, right? We did a SNMP discovery, and when we issued this command, this is the data we got back from that command. Or if it was discovered via one of those patterns, how do we know it's a switch? Because this pattern ran, and based on the details that were returned, it identified that as a switch port. And you'll see, this is where I can go in and even look to see, is it Silkworm, is it Nexus, is it Brocade, what kind of switch is it? All the details. So it allows you, it's very powerful, but it's very easy to use because there's not a lot of moving parts. You're not dealing with agents. You're not dealing with, relay servers and different pieces of infrastructure you have to deploy. It's one box, one virtual appliance, and you can collect all of this. Now, in terms of licensing, the licensing is based on the number of server operating system instances. So that would mean physical or virtual, right? So if I've got a physical host that's got 5 VMs on it, that would be 6 licenses, right? 1 for the physical host and 5 licenses for each of the 5 virtual machines running on that physical host. Now it doesn't count for routers and switches and printers, everything else. You're going to find everything through that discovery that's on the network. But licensing is only concerned with server operating system instances only. So you can have 8,000 routers you discover, but if you only discover 7 servers, then you require 7 licenses.
And another question, what about ports and services on a specific server?
Yeah, exact same level of information. So I can create a script for that server and show you, and say I grab if I go back to that baseline dashboard where things are broken down by, hardware. If I look at a host, some kind of physical host or virtual host, and I pick it, then it's going to show me right down here at the bottom, right? Everything from port details, file system details, disk drive information, you name it. And again, I can follow these breadcrumbs to dig into that port or that switch, the actual switch, if I want to start following the trail. So if I know that, this drive is connected to a particular host, I can click on that host and it's going to bring up a graphic that's going to show me that physical host, and then I can see all of the information from on that host. What kind of device is it, and what's it running, and how many software instances are running on it. So it makes it very easy to collect all of that detail. And again, this is all out of the box. I mean, most customers don't have to spend, I would say probably 95% of customers don't ever have to really deal with building or modifying those patterns. It's really only if you're doing a lot of internal development and building your own software where, the patterns are going to be important, so that you can identify how to identify your software versus every third-party app, major vendors. BMC is going to update those every 30 days for you automatically. So as new software is coming out, you should not be required to ever have to worry about Oracle or Microsoft or Adobe, things like that. It's only going to be those things that you're doing internal development on.
And that's all the questions we have for now.
Okay, well, fantastic. Well, I want to say I appreciate everybody's time. I hope everybody was able to get something of value out of the conversation. And with that, I guess, Rich, I'll throw it back over to you for wrap up and close.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kyle. Great presentation, and I think we learned a great deal today. I want to thank each and every one of you for attending our presentation today, and I hope you've got a lot out of it. If you have additional questions, I encourage you to go ahead and reach out to us via 844 Flycast or email us at info@flycastpartners.com, or you can go to our website and start chatting with us in that little green box in the corner. We'll be happy to answer or get the information that you're looking for. With that being said, Kyle, thank you for your time today. Very much appreciated. And audience, thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be with us. And everyone stay safe until our next webinar.